I like outdoor advertising. I just don't think it ought to be outdoors. And it's not a question of aesthetics. It's simply that it invades. I can't close it up. I can't throw it away. It's just there, whether I like it or not.
Welcome to the Woodshed.
Hey, welcome to another Woodshed. Really excited about this show. We're doing something a little bit different. We're going to be talking about definitely one of my heroes, a person I never met, but has been really influential for CPB, and that's Howard Luck Gossage. This is a San Francisco ad man. He was very influential for us at CPB. But we just did a little informal survey and asked around how many people had heard of him. And I think maybe 30% was roughly the number of creatives, maybe lower. They're telling me lower than 30%. Tragic.
It is a little tragic.
It's a little tragic. And the reason that it's tragic is because the guy fucking was brilliant. And we can't even cover all the brilliant stuff that he did.
I think
in this show.
It's also interesting. I think that just his very nature was sort of outsider anyway. First of all, you're in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. And I would venture to say, I mean, obviously his agency isn't around anymore.
It wasn't. I mean, at the time, San Francisco was not the ad market.
Yeah, exactly. He was a very outsider to be in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And I don't think counts as one of those, rock star, I guess, or what? He's not like an Ogilvy.
Kind of like a separate thing. And years ago, Jeff Goodby and Bruce Bendinger and a few other people got together, and I think decided to write a book about him, and that is the Book of Gossage. And I think they wrote the book at the time because they realized here's a guy that was an outsider a bit, but really brilliant, and they wanted to capture everything that he did, and it hit it. It's just an amazing time for us at CPB. Essentially at the same time we were hitting our stride and the internet was becoming a thing,
really big thing.
That you could play with.
It was, honestly,
wait a minute.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just have to stop because I didn't introduce you. Joining me on the show is Mike Howard, who is a creative director, been a creative director for a long time now.
A little bit, couple weeks. No, I'm joking.
Yeah. For quite a while, but you started as my assistant.
That's right. I was.
Is that embarrassing for me to bring up?
No, not even a little bit.
Okay.
It's actually a really great story. I was an intern for 5 credits. Spent all my free time at my internship. I think you guys gave me lunch money, which was really fun, but it was more fun than class. And then at the end of my internship, while I was still in school, Alex hired me as his secretary. Is that secretary? Is that PC?
I don't know. I think so.
Okay, but you called me.
But you were terrible.
Horrible secretary.
Terrible.
Horrible. But it was a lot of fun. And these were back in the days before Google image search.
Yeah.
Literally before Google image search.
We would just look through books of stock photography.
Exactly. That was a big part of my job, was just going out, and the creators would give me shopping lists.
Yeah.
And I would go to the most insane place, spend my entire day shopping for stuff for comps to make ads out of, and then they would shoot them, which was.
And speaking of books, so this book came out, and Bill Wright, who was a copywriter at the agency at the time, said, "Hey, have you read this?" And I hadn't. I read it, and then I think I probably sent you out to buy us.
I'm sure. Yes,
enough copies for the whole creative department.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, there were a bunch of little errands like that I got to do, and I still have mine. And I think a lot of people. It's funny because I still work with. I've worked with a lot of other people who were around at that particular time, and they all still drag it around from one agency to the next.
The book.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
You see it on pretty much every bookshelf of anyone who was there at the time.
And the book came out at a time that was we were sort of beginning to hit our stride, I think. Really early, though. And Jeff Goodby and Bruce Bendinger and some other people put together this book to capture the life of this man who was a hero to them, became a hero to a lot of people, but was also an outsider, I think. Not a New York ad guy, not a New York or Chicago ad person.
Yeah, and when you think about things that were happening in San Francisco at that particular point in time, he had sort of a salon mentality about his agency and the people that he hung around with. He was friends with John Steinbeck, he was friends with Tom Wolfe. Marshall McLuhan at the time, Ken Kesey, all these people who were sort of countercultural. And he, in his own way, while not a hippie, is definitely a piece of San Francisco early counterculture.
Yeah. Very the beginnings of sort of that San Francisco progressive mentality.
Absolutely.
Think,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Not a hippie at all.
Not even slightly.
Like maybe smoked a pipe.
Yeah.
And,
madman. Total madman. Like
Yeah.
looked the part of a madman.
Yeah. Not a hippie. But his work was weird. It was really weird. And I think for us, the thing that was so exciting about it, and a lot of people didn't get, and I think still today, a lot of people don't understand.
It's hard to draw the line.
Between what he was doing and what we're doing, and what, if you're in an agency now, what you're doing.
Yeah,
there is
absolutely.
a direct line, and it's a much easier line for me. It's a much easier line to draw from his philosophies than from Ogilvy's philosophies. Ogilvy's philosophies, not. This is going to sound negative.
There's no diss,
but there's a lot of rules.
Yeah,
Yeah, and this is sort of the anti-rules.
Yeah, his
version
whole,
of rules.
I feel like when you look through his advertising, his whole take was a piss take on advertising.
Right.
And I think it's because he hated it. Like he saw, and even if you think
I've always hated it.
Yeah. And I honestly think that people who hate it tend to be better at it because they want to make something that isn't.
And and like I said that once in an interview, and it was it was a writer from Brazil where they really like advertising.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they said, why do you love advertising? And I was like, I don't. I kind of hate it. And his face was so heartbroken. I was like, wait, let me adjust.
Well, it's become a thing, right? Like it is a diss in an agency world or an agency environment to hear that something is too addy.
And what
That's an ad.
And
It's an ad.
what it wasn't that I had to correct. And the finer point is, it isn't, I love the people. I love the things that have happened. I love the history. But I believe that it's very of the moment. And so it's designed to change all the time. And so to have too much respect for a thing
that is disposable.
Yeah. In its current form can keep you from iterating on it.
Agreed. 100%. And it's funny too, because I'm sure there's plenty of schools of thought, but there is very hard to get across the idea that you believe advertising is a disposable thing and needs to just be constantly refreshed when so many people regard it as, I guess, art, and that's not, and that again,
but art's the
not
same way. Art,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I went to an exhibit of Moreau, and like as you walked in, the first thing it said was sort of his treatise on what he was trying to do, and it was, I'm going to attempt to assassinate art.
It's
and
an effect.
It was amazing as you watched him sort of disassemble art and take a big piss take at the whole thing. And then he did it for so long that he had to do it about his own work.
Exactly. Self-referential.
Yeah. So then he had to tear himself apart with his own art,
which is genius. Really,
great.
Really, really genius.
It's great.
And when you going back to Gossage, it's funny because hanging around with Marshall McLuhan, like that was his whole thing was about, first of all, he predicted the internet maybe 30 years before it actually happened. So you've got, that influence on everything the Gossage
This is
did.
the medium is the message.
The medium is the message.
Is it medium or media?
It's medium.
Medium.
Yes. His theory was that the effect of a medium, there's more than one medium. It's a media.
Got it. Okay.
No worries. But that was really interesting. I also think that McLuhan is famous for thinking that advertising was high art, and not in the way that it needs to be precious and perfect, but because great art has an effect on you.
Mm-hmm.
And it should be maybe something more than just, how much cash goes in the register.
Yeah. And what was cool about Howard is he would collect these people and he would, have them, like you said, a salon. His office, this is a really small potential piece of influence, but his office was in a firehouse.
Right. Exactly.
In San Francisco.
Exactly.
And years later, when we built this office, I put in several fire poles.
Not just one. It's an important point.
I don't know if it matters how many. And I don't know if it was just that I like to do things that I wanted to do when I was 12. And, I try to go back to that. But I would bet that it was also very much, it was put in my head because he had one.
I mean, firehouses, even just the environment in and of itself is like a pretty great like starting point.
Being in a church, being in an old church,
Yep.
an old firehouse, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that he did, if you haven't heard about him, and you probably wouldn't know, was he seemed to be just a freak for coupons. Like that was if there's one thing I would say,
Absolutely.
it was that he was a freak for coupons. Now for me, that translated into something a little bit bigger, which is like he really wanted to. He was dying to have a conversation with his audience, with the people on the other side of that ad. And when I read the book, and the internet's coming, and all these things that you could feel the longing in every ad, like, oh, can I connect with you?
Yeah, exactly.
And we used to talk about that conversation a lot, and it suddenly was way easier. In a lot of ways I felt like, God, thank God he's not still alive, because he would just kick our asses.
Yeah. So crush it. And it was like all the tools that we have available to us that were the tools that he maybe dreamed or would have dreamed of having. I think there was something. It was
and
funny,
like you said, he probably knew we're coming, because Marshall McLuhan's like, yeah, this is probably coming.
Yeah, absolutely. It was part of like his, like, I guess, media theory.
Yeah.
The other thing where that is concerned is I remember reading something about how he regarded advertising as in general a mask for a corporation to hide behind.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't understand how
like
that could be communicated.
Poor advertising.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly said that basically he wanted something that was more conversant.
Yeah.
And he believed, genuinely speaking, that you would reach a certain kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
With a voice that would speak to them rather than at them, I guess. Which is something we were always trying to do.
And when and it was funny because at the time people were applying traditional advertising to the internet. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, absolutely.
And no one was having a conversation through it. I shouldn't say no one. It was very rare. It was not happening in advertising.
Yeah.
And one of his I want to just say one other thing. There's a term. I mean, there's many things that he coined, but we were talking about one earlier.
Yeah, lemons and lemonade. Like if your life gives if you ever get a lemon, make lemonade.
That's how he put it.
That's how he put it.
Yeah.
And it's become, I mean, that's unbelievable that that's his saying.
It's fucking Shakespearean.
It's completely
right?
Shakespearean.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so colloquial now.
Right.
And yet 30% of the creative department only
right.
or lower doesn't even know.
They don't know they know him.
Exactly.
But they know that.
That's exactly right.
So you do know him. There's an ad that's pretty famous. Well, if you know Howard,
right,
and if you know this sort of era about coupons, where he was doing FINA gas stations, and he launched this ad probably in the New York Times, I would think. In San Francisco Chronicle. Yeah. And the headline is send in for your free sample of pink air.
It's so arch. I love it.
And he's taking the piss out of the fact that they were adding coloring to gasoline at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so some gases had blue, some were red, some were, and they were trying to suggest that these additives are what made them different. And the truth was
they're exactly the same.
It's like,
and what's great is
gas with food coloring.
The actual ad undoes the claim of pink air really wonderfully, because of course you can't, once it's in the tire, you can't tell what color it is anyway. And we couldn't even send it to you if you wanted it to. So he basically just asked people to write in, and he would send them a pink balloon.
He would send a pink balloon,
which is sort of how it looks.
Yeah.
It would approximate, once you blew it up, what pink air would look like.
Yes, it appears as though it may be filled with pink air. Is there something? I mean, I'm not trying to draw comparisons. I'm more inspiration. So I've got Howard's or the Book of Gossage, and then we've got our book. I think you got to go later on.
Yeah, I think so too.
Right.
I always think about Molson.
Molson is a good one.
Twin label technology.
Yeah. See if you can find that, but we could talk about that.
Even from a design perspective, and it's like obviously modernized with Molson, but when I'm trying to think of when this was, the early 2000s probably.
I'm
when
sure.
We had Molson.
Yeah.
And the idea was that everyone's making this claim that beer actually says something about you.
Well, the planners they were at bars and they noticed that people would arrange their beer in their hands so that the label was always pointing out, and it was pointing to whoever I think they found attractive.
That is so funny. I didn't know that.
Oh, you didn't know that part? So I should say that the book of ours that we're going through is Hoopla. Another book no one's heard of.
Fun book though, really fun.
It's fun unless you try to read it, and then it really hurts your eyes. Like maybe get a copy made of each page that you want to read.
It's very skimmable.
It's pink with black type in many areas, and I still regret it.
Oh, come on.
I do.
It was hilarious.
Yeah, I regret it a little. Because there's stuff that it would be good to read, and we made it nearly impossible in places to read. Because we were so punk rock about it.
Yeah, there was sandpaper on the cover to begin with, right?
Yeah, it would.
So that it would fuck with the other two books next to it.
It would also damage furniture if you put it down on it. It was very punk rock. And there was a review which I actually loved, which was it felt like going through our trash.
It's pretty much exactly what it was like.
And that's kind of what we were going for. It was very freeform. There's that. So people would aim beers, at attractive people of that they wanted to hook up with. And so we said, well, why not make it easier? Because you got to go through these gymnastics. It's like, well, if a bud means this, then I'm like this, and let me try to get to that. And you point that at you. So yeah, we did labels, twin label, Molson label on the front, and if you're watching, you can see it. But if you're not, if you're on the podcast, it had the Molson label on the front, and on the back we made a label like I'm good at skinny dipping.
Yeah, my mother knows judo.
Yeah,
nice
one man bachelorette party.
Yeah, and basically they were conversation starters. I mean, which is
and they worked like crazy. We tried it in a bar before we launched it because it was going to cost $1 million to add another label to the line. And so we ran a test on premise, and it was like their best on premise night ever. And
no kidding, that's really great. I was there during this period of time. It wasn't involved in the work, and I was so jealous of it. It's really good. I think probably when you look at from a design perspective, maybe because the design helps draw the line between.
It just looks like
it looks like
we just tried to make it look like the label. We didn't do anything fancy there, Mike.
No, I'm just saying that this to me, it's an example of drawing a very clear line between Gossage and what we were trying to do at the time.
I think it's a great example, and definitely inspired by the fact that he wanted to have a conversation, and then could we facilitate conversations that people were having, and kind of take the piss out of the fact that the notion that a beer means
says anything at all about
something
you.
about you,
This beer does the talking for you.
It's true, but it's also boring, right?
Yeah, completely.
So, yeah. Another thing that and you seem to really be dialed on Gossage, actually.
It's
because I was going to bring up some other aspects, but
no, go ahead. You know what? It's one of those things where as I move, so this is my third time here at this agency, and I love being back. But what's interesting is when the triple boomerang. I'm a triple boomerang at this point. But one of the things you learn when you go to other different ad agencies and you bring this kind of philosophy with you is that it first of all, it's difficult to explain, and second of all, I think it's really difficult for people to translate unless you're like immersed in this culture at that particular point in time.
Yeah.
And everything is so clearly like it.
Yeah.
That it just, it's one of those things that you saw at being effective. And I always just sort of liked it because I was from this particular school of advertising. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I don't know.
Well, as my assistant, like you were so funny as assistant because you're terrible with assistant stuff, but you're kind of awesome, like extra creative director. So, people would be in my office, we'd be going through work and they'd be pitching things and we'd be working on things. And I would just look up at you, and every now and then you just give me this like knowing nod, like, yeah.
I also laugh. I like to laugh, which is I think a good thing for a creative to have.
Honestly, it was awesome. And I felt like, I'll tell you, even back then, I thought this dude is going to be a creative director because he's soaking in it right now. It
was the best vantage point ever. And what was funny is I didn't realize Alex had an easy chair. It's a loose term for what it was. It was kind of a trashy old like yellow velvet chair in the corner of his office, and I would do expense reports there. And just because I would love to watch creatives present. And at that point in time, it was just such a deep bench. It was so fun. And watching those guys present, there was only one guy, and he was new. There was one guy who was I don't want to say it was put off by it, but it was odd to him that when he came in to present work to you, he kind of looked back over his shoulder, saw me there with, my paperwork, doing what I was doing. He was like, is he always going to be here? Is that it never even occurred to me that it wouldn't,
That it was weird.
that it was weird or it wasn't allowed or something like that. But I got to see such funny things happen.
Yeah.
It's the best way to learn the job. I maintain to this day.
It was weird, but I think it was weird. But it was really fun for us. So he also said he said something to the effect that advertising's not a job for a grown man.
Yes.
Yeah.
I forget the exact quote.
I forget it too. And we apologize. But this will be a reason to read the book.
Absolutely.
It's really intriguing. And later in his life, he began to work, on things like the Sierra Club.
Yeah, a lot of nonprofit. And I think I just saw, I would imagine it comes out of.
You think truth
Might have been.
I mean, there's definitely, when you look at the truth work and the approach,
No doubt about it.
very much influenced, but maybe even the decision that we should
Do that.
Because the agency was very split on it, because we had a lot of smokers in the agency
Interesting.
at the time.
So that was when I came on board as an intern. Was right after you got the
After we got it.
Florida anti-tobacco campaign,
Yeah.
which is the Department of Health, and then nationally. I think you got more Gossage as it became national,
Mm-hmm.
particularly with I guess it was most visibly in the Infect campaign, which was a really big deal at the time. And basically the thought process there was, rather than doing things to get young people involved in a movement, we would give them the tools. And we use that word all the time, tools, right?
Yeah.
To be involved in the anti-tobacco movement. And so the ads then just became instructions.
All the ads were inserts of tools that you could sort of participate in your own rebellion.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was interesting too, because I think at that point in time, magazines were, maybe I'm predating some of it, but magazines were kind of hurting for dollars, so they were willing to do more fun things.
Oh, they did crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And then fast forward again. This is like sort of, you have to undo yourself. Fast forward like 2 years from past that, and magazines were stuffed.
Yeah,
all of them.
It was ridiculous.
It was
so dumb
so
at some
dumb.
point. Like the New Yorker in particular, you pick up the New Yorker, which is just like,
it got so dumb.
Erudite.
There were 4 CDs in it, and it got totally out of control.
Yeah.
And I felt somewhat responsible.
Totally responsible. Are you kidding me?
Well, you've opened up this book, which was, I think it's the first I know it's the first advertising Google ever did. Why did you open that? It does feel very. It's Gossage. What would be
Gossage-ish?
Gossage like
Gossage-esque.
Gossagean.
Yeah, it was fun. I think, and if I'm not mistaken, again, I don't think I was here at that particular point in time, but I always loved it. It was for employment. And so there was a.
But why do you think it's Gossage?
So
we're looking at a billboard. The billboard was an equation. It ran in San Francisco. It's just an equation in brackets with .com.
By the way, also Boston, MIT. I actually got to see
it. Did run in Boston too,
where I lived at that particular time. So
it was a recruiting campaign.
And it
Google
means absolutely
was looking
nothing.
for more great engineers.
Right, and it means absolutely nothing to a layperson. It's
to
money spent
to 99.9%
of people
it
probably
meant
even,
nothing. Maybe more.
Is there even? I would like. There's slim integers. First 10-digit prime found in consecutive digits of variable e.com. So it's
catchy billboard.
It's a catchy billboard. No logos. It's white. It's black type on a white billboard, and there's nobody except the people at MIT who would go buy the thing every day. Once you found that .com, it led you to
more problems. So then you arrived at a sort of anonymous space, and you had to solve more tough math problems. And eventually it said, congratulations, you've made it through to Google Recruiting.
Which is is still and was then a really incredible deal.
And then within, 60 seconds, people were sharing here's how you get there. Here's exactly. But I think it actually worked really well. They did get really, qualified candidates, which is what they were looking for.
And what's funny is I think that sort of like that kind of like game in advertising thing. I think, we've seen it a lot since. This was at least as far as I'm concerned, the first time I'd ever seen it done.
Yeah.
It's so deeply too, because, a lot of like news outlets didn't even pass the billboard. Like they, would do stories about that billboard, but the rest of the stuff was insanely hard, like absolutely incredible. The idea that that you guys could actually come up with these problems was genius in and of itself. Like I don't know who you asked or how you went about the process, but it was pretty incredible.
There's another thing that I mean, there's a ton of parallels, but so there's this ad that Howard did. It's in the book, and it says, "Send in for your free Eagle." That's a shirt company.
That's great.
Shirt kerchief, shirtkin, napchief, like with question marks. They don't know what to call it.
Made up word. Love it.
Made up word, made up thing. And what it is it buttons to I guess it's a napkin with a buttonhole.
Yeah.
And so it buttons onto your shirt. And I mean, a couple things come up for me. One is the way we approached gear, right? So you've turned some mini, but the gear for mini, where
like the grab handle.
Our philosophy with gear is when the brand and that T-shirt come together, it has to make something different. You can't just but putting the logo on the T-shirt,
that's just swaggy.
It's
stuff.
Yeah,
right,
it's fine. It's fine, but it's not really branding.
Exactly.
So we did things like that sweatshirt where you could unzip just the left sleeve, and so that your arm that sticks out while you're driving would get a tan. The other one didn't need to convert.
Right. Exactly.
It's inside the car. What are you going to do?
It makes no sense. Doing it for real, I think.
That's true too. Like he had them sew up shirt kerchiefs.
Right.
You know?
So it's one thing to do, and I think it's funny because like your instinct, I think at some point would be to make a funny ad about a thing that you didn't really do.
Yeah.
And that was always that was what made CPB really special back then, is like all the stuff was done and made for real and for actual consumption. I don't even know if anyone ever bought any of the things, but they bought the things. Great. Like, there was the G-Force thing.
Well, you did a thing, which was the fast for Volkswagen.
I did a thing.
Which was a little like, what would you call it?
Like a demon. It was basically like the idea was that
it was a demon toy. It was your
Kid Robot, collectible kind of a thing. And, insight being that like the people who love GTIs, and we were relaunching the GTI Mark V at that point in time, the people who really love GTIs are like geeks for it.
You got this fast inside you that wanted to come out. So it was that, right? But I remember the dealers running ads, which was $16,000 for a fast, and we'll throw in a GTI. That's how much they were selling.
Yeah, it was pretty great.
And then you probably know the number, but I remember they were on eBay, just the fast. People were reselling.
$8,000, I think, was the highest one I ever saw.
Okay, I never saw that. I was gonna say 800.
Oh, it might have been 800.
I think it's 800. I think you added
Yeah.
I think you added a zero to your.
Not
toy.
a good math guy.
Yeah. The other thing that it makes me think about is the stuff that we would do, like Subservient Chicken, and how confused people were by it at the early. Like now it's not confusing. Nope. You kind of get it. And now it's actually just old. But at the time, I remember the specific confusion. And I would say that if I was a client and if I was a person, I might have that same confusion about shirt kerchief, which is, how is a shirt kerchief going to sell a shirt? Right. And I think that in this case, it's a little bit harder to explain in some ways than Subservient Chicken, but
because
he has another famous quote we should bring up right now,
which is the interesting thing.
Yeah.
I forget exactly.
People don't read ads; they read things that interest them, and sometimes that's an ad.
Sometimes that's an ad. Yes.
Yeah. And that was, man, that hit home for me, and with Mini we did long copy outdoor.
Yeah, which is a completely, it's for sitting at stoplights, but no one does more than 8 words. I mean, it was like, that's, standard practice. And it always has been.
Yeah. But it worked.
It totally did.
And we inserted those books into it. It was one of the early inserts. And that book, when the results came back, that book was more widely read than any of the ads, including ads with one line of copy.
That's hilarious.
So he was right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we had at the same time.
Gossage was right.
At the same time, we had, and I thought this is so freaking genius. We had business cards that were long copy. There were long copy business cards that all wrote up to the idea, to your name. So, and I'm forgetting the subject matter of them, but we definitely really loved
long. Yeah, we loved long copy. Well, there was one about, we had the one rounded corner. So we said that this business card is 25% safer than
because
other agency business cards.
You won't poke your eye out. Right. Yeah. Exactly.
We care about you. Versus those other agencies.
Those other agencies.
Yeah, those other agencies, they don't care.
And it was so great because it's kind of like, you always hear that the tradition of the sort of like Asian countries where you like regard your credit, your business card. And here's a card that actually forces
you just look at it.
Like, 3 minutes later, you're still like checking out the.
Another nice one was the history of the card. I found one of those the other day.
You did that one? Yeah. It was the Louis the 15th or 14th. I forget.
One of those.
One of them.
Yeah.
But they would trade.
They would write
cards.
their names on playing cards.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was sort of like a business card
Before
exchange.
there was business cards.
Exactly. So we wrote one about that and had Louis on it.
Yeah.
Yes, on the backside.
And that's very Gossage too. Gossage liked to educate you while he was advertising too.
Yeah, and if you can make it up,
that's a lot of fun.
And if it's real, it's awesome. If you can make it like I always think of the Flahulik. Is it Flahulik? His ad?
Yeah, that is his ad.
It was Flahulik is a Gaelic word, and I think it means generosity or open-handedness, that type of thing, and would sort of like that's how you pronounce it. And if you look at it in Gaelic, you know it means absolutely nothing. But he would explain it as it regarded to whiskey, I believe, Irish whiskey.
Yeah.
But then went on to explain big napkins, big fluffy napkins are a Flahulik, and the things that aren't Flahulik are welcome mats.
It was the
welcome
original Farfignugan.
It's exactly right.
Right.
It meant, and literally the headline was just Flahulik. You'd have to read through the thing to figure out what it was. Oh, and they also had gear for that. They had like a pin, and you could designate somebody either Flahulik or unflahulik. Unflahulik being like stingy and jerky. And
so I remember, so how does that sell?
Irish whiskey.
Well, Irish whiskey, right? So you know, it's that people are interested in you and your company, and it's
the education.
It's not that complicated. But what we were doing when we launched Subservient Chicken, we did two or three TV spots at the same time that we did the web activation, the little game, and no one remembers the TV spots. But I distinctly remember being on the phone with reporters and them saying, "How on earth?"
Did you?
Are you gonna? How does this sell?
Oh, I see what you're
saying. Chicken or a chicken sandwich, and I'm like, at the end of the TV commercial where it says "Chicken Your Way,"
have it your way was the
tagline.
That's exactly
literally people having their way with the chicken, and even with that level of description, they're like, I don't know, is that gonna work? I'm like, how is it that you've accepted that you can watch a TV script with a little play? Right.
Little play.
A little play. Well, I make fun of plays. There's a little play, and then it's a branded play, and that's going to sell something. And it's true. But how is that? Why do you understand that?
And not right.
Yeah. Those big changes, and then understanding that the understanding that he had in the nuances and how you could talk to somebody and how you could charm somebody. It's much broader than just bringing the same fucking tools, and the same.
Well, also too, like going back to your point about putting TV on the internet, and that's still something that we do today, but like that really changed everybody's. I feel like that phenomenon, Subservient Chicken phenomena, changed. Everybody looked at it, they were like, "Oh, that's how you use the internet. Oh, that's how we do it." Like there.
Right. And then later you got to make fun of that.
Right, of course.
Because everything is a microsite.
I love to tell the story, and I don't even know if it's correct. The way I heard it anyway, this is the lore, is that the verbs used for Subservient Chicken, like the things you asked a Subservient Chicken to do, were just basically like an all agency email, like give us a list of 10 verbs. And it came down to,
it's not really true. It's close to true though. So we had people. And it was more than the agency, but the agency and everybody we knew. And we said, it just was a picture. It's like, what do you want the chicken to do?
Right.
And they would write. So it could be a verb, but it could be sentences because you could put anything in that field. Right. And at about 500.
That's right.
This is true. At about 500, we stopped getting any new requests.
And that is the magic number of the Subservient Chicken. Given a chair in the room or couch in the room.
So it's a couch and whatever the other, a chicken and I don't remember what else was in.
Carpet.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot in there. So people thought they were coming up with the most outrageous thing, but we knew they were going to ask that because we had paneled it long
Which is
enough.
pretty amazing when you think about like 500 being the sort of like, okay, pretty much you can do anything with this chicken at 500.
I think the sad part of that is we think we're snowflakes.
Yeah.
And we maybe aren't. We maybe just are like pretty much
pretty
coded.
finite. We're finite.
Pretty finite. Yeah, there's only a few opinions that we've got out there. So I want to touch on what he did with the Grand Canyon, because if you like the Grand Canyon,
I've never been.
and well, you should go, and then you could, while you're there, you could be like, thanks, Howard.
Appreciate it.
Because appreciate it, because he was working with the Sierra Club, and they were going to flood part of it, fill it, but not, not super bad, just a little.
I can't even imagine
and that was
the
kind
concept
of
is
that
today.
was kind of their argument, was they were just going to flood it a little.
What was I'll admit some ignorance where
Yeah.
his work with the Sierra Club is concerned. I'm curious to know, like, what was the thinking there about flooding it?
Why were they?
Yeah.
They needed more power for Phoenix, I think.
Okay.
And so
Phoenix.
I'm not going to say anything about it.
Never been there. Sorry. I hear it's
I
great.
think I've been there once. It's nice. And and they figured out how to get their power. It's, as far as I know,
Sure.
Phoenix,
It's pretty big, pretty metropolitan area.
lights are still on in Phoenix.
Totally.
So
The wind is still blowing.
so it worked
The sun is still
out.
shining.
But his answer, this ad is just so, it's one of the best headlines. And it said,
that's
should we
great.
also flood the Sistine Chapel so tourists can get near the ceiling? And the reason why is because when they said they were going to flood it maybe 400 feet, the politicians were saying it'll actually, for tourists, it'll be nicer because you get a better view up there.
Not so deep.
Not
Right.
so- yeah. It's not so hard to see the top.
Not so mind-bogglingly, massively epic.
Yeah. So I thought his answer was amazing. Obviously, it has a coupon, and like any Gossage coupon, there's lots of options about like what you can do, that boxes to choose, and so we're kind of running out of time.
Okay. I could talk about him all day.
I know I could talk about him all day too. I hope that everybody who's listening grabs the book, and hell, get a hoopla while you're at it.
This is all just a crafty ploy.
It isn't. I don't even know if there are any hooplas available. I also wanted to thank Justin Oberman because he made me this cool Gossage sweatshirt that I'm wearing.
He loves sweatshirts, Gossage. That's his thing.
He loves sweatshirts, and Justin, in making this sweatshirt, it kind of reminded me that, man, we should do a show on Gossage. And then the copy on the back of this sweatshirt. Will you read it? Because
Yes,
I think
I will.
it's great.
I will. It's nobody reads sweatshirts. People read what interests them, and sometimes it's a sweatshirt.
Very nice, Justin.
Little play.
Yeah. And
classic.
obviously love and lots of respect going out to Jeff Goodby and to Bruce for Bedinger for putting this book together. And
Jeff Goodby's foreword is quite great.
it's quite great.
Quite great. I mean,
Well
there's no other
put.
words. Sorry. I'm trying to think of a better one. But
You're a
great.
writer too, aren't you?
It's
Quite-
pretty. That's what they tell me.
It's quite great.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of like clear respect for what he started out in San Francisco.
Yeah. And it's just fun to kind of like draw the lines between all this stuff. Right?
Absolutely.
So I hope that you enjoyed the show. If you want to see what Justin Oberman is up to, he made the sweatshirt. He's up to other stuff, but you can go to justinoberman.com. As always, for show notes and links, go to thewoodshedshow.com. Is that the right URL? And we will see you next time on The Woodshed.